really visually very beautiful. But the very important thing is why, of course, why some stories.
That's the controversial work of artist Paula Gerard coming up after the latest BBC News.
BBC News with Neil Eunice. The South African presidency says the health of Nelson Mandela is critical and has deteriorated over the past 48 hours. After visiting him in hospital in Pretoria, his eldest daughter, Makasiwa, said the situation did not look good, but she said Mr. Mandela was responding and trying to open his eyes when family members spoke to him. President Obama has been holding talks in Dakar with the Senegalese President Macky Sall on the first leg of an African tour. In the last half hour, Mr. Obama told a news conference the world tended to overlook Africa's democratic progress. He congratulated Senegal for being one of the continent's most stable democracies and for its continuing ambitious reforms. Leaders of European Union institutions have reached an agreement on its controversial long-term budget. The overall size remains the same as agreed by the member states, more than $1,000 billion, but there will be more flexibility in how the money is spent. The mother of the murdered British teenager, Stephen Lawrence, has called for a full public inquiry into allegations that London's main police force tried to smear her family. After meeting the Home Secretary, Doreen Lawrence said the allegations made her sick to the stomach. A human rights group says more than 2 million Tibetans have been resettled over the last 7 years in a Chinese government scheme that is radically changing their way of life. That number includes hundreds of thousands of nomads forced to live in permanent communities. Human Rights Watch says many of those who have moved have not been properly consulted or compensated. Public transport in Portugal is being disrupted by a 24-hour general strike called in protest at the austerity policies of the right-of-centre government. The national rail operator and the Lisbon Metro are running no trains all day, and many bus routes have been suspended. BBC World News.
You're with Outlook from the BBC World Service. I'm Matthew Bannister. Still to come, the Kyrgyz lawyers who were beaten up because they defended Uzbeks after the ethnic violence of 2010. And in Witness, memories of President John F. Kennedy's historic visit to Ireland 50 years ago.
He was intensely glamorous. And part of the glamour arose from the fact that he was so sometimes Irish people, if it was a very sunny day in the summer, when suddenly red, their skin burned rather than tanned.
More on that story later. But before that, Paula Gerard used to be a bodyguard for the Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat. But after he was shot in the leg, he turned his back on the military life and became an artist. Now he's developing an international reputation for controversial work, which documents daily life in the occupied West Bank where he lives. In particular, he focuses on issues of statehood, freedom, and division. For the Berlin Biennale, he created a provocative passport stamp featuring a sunbird, which is a well-known Palestinian symbol, and the words, "the State of Palestine." For his latest exhibition in London, he made work from concrete chipped from the wall erected between Israel and the Palestinian territories. When he came to the Outlook studio, Paula Gerard told me more about his route to becoming an artist.
In Palestine, like in my childhood, I was always trying to do some kind of sculpture and from wood and from stones, and I really like to do stuff with my hands. And when I went to be a bodyguard with the Palestinian army, let's say, kind of army, I went there with the aim to get salary to be able to continue my studies in art. But when I started working as a bodyguard with Arafat, I found myself really involved and really captured by this guy, and I was like finding myself full-time job for him, and I didn't have time to think about doing art and stuff. And,
So did you travel with him and
yes.
live closely with him?
Yeah. In 2002, I got injured like in my leg in during the huge downturn. At that time, I had like like 1 year of education and treatment. So then I started to think about myself. When I started doing graphic design, and from the graphic design, I get to put the camera back again.
So you were able to get a different perspective by viewing him through the camera.
Yes.
To stand back in a way and to see it as others see it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I suppose in a way that is what your art is all about, isn't it? It's about making us see these issues that affect people in the Palestinian territories, see them differently.
Yeah, it is people all around the world. They thought it's all about politics, and it's not about politics. It's not about making political articles. And I always say for all political and I take all my works inspired by daily life of the people.
And let's talk about some of the other works that you've been involved in, the works that really specifically deal with borders, because one of the things that you did was to create a passport stamp and to go out and try to stamp people's passports with it.
I was like really interested with the idea of this bird that it's called Palestine, some bird. We use that bird to design my stamp. It's called a Palestine design. I make it on real stamp that you can stamp passport.
A rubber stamp, yeah.
Yeah, rubber stamp. So I thought about like how I will be able to make this stamp alive. I need to give life to the stamp. If I do it on fake paper, it will be nothing. It's just fake art object. Then I go beyond, let's say, and I went to the bus station where people come from Jerusalem because this is the point that I can meet them. And I said, good morning, my name is Khaled Jabbar, I'm an artist, and I made this design of the state of Palestine, and I would like to stamp your passport. So people, they said, what? Are you serious? They said, this is true. I said, no, this is fake. That means if you stamp your passport, you may have a big problem with the Israeli border police system at Ben Gurion Airport. So he said, are you sure? So I will do it. I said, I would like to do it. If you want to do it, you need to take the risk for yourself. And there were a lot of people who agree with it.
A lot of people did say that. Yeah. Did they have problems when they tried to go back? Really? What sort of things happened to them?
They start making people interrogation and they make hard time for them. And there is some people, they get a strip search as a punishment for this time. And the most hard story happened to one girl, Alison. She has a American and Israeli passport. So she came to me to stamp her American passport. After 1 month, she came back to stamp her Israeli passport. I didn't see her carry Israeli passport because she lives in London. And then I said to her, are you serious that you want to stamp your passport? She said, yes. I said, but this will be the most dangerous act you will do. And it will be very risky for you and for me. She said, well, just do it. Then I do it. And it was really something very powerful and emotional. And I was emotionally involved with this passport. They stopped her and they said to her, what is this? And they asked her, where do you get the stamp? Who is the guy who gave you the stamp? And she said, I don't remember his name. So in the end, they gave her the Israeli stamp, the Israeli passport, cancelled. They cancelled the passport.
How did you feel about all that happening to her as a result of your stamp?
I feel okay, because in the beginning I told everybody that this is your passport, it's your responsibility.
And in a way, that story makes your point for you, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so it achieves the aim that you were achieving, but obviously she had to go through a lot of hard work to make your point.
Yeah. In partnership, when I did this time, it's really this person became my partner with this work.
When you go to carry out your work on the wall that's been built between the territories and Israel, you go and you take material from the wall and you turn it into other objects. In particular, a football is one of the objects that you've made from material. Why that?
Actually, I was thinking how I need to disable the wall and change the functional use of the wall from separation to something else. And I believe that one day, like the wall in Berlin, these people will destroy the wall in Palestine. And this wall will fall down again. But after falling down, the wall will have a little concrete. So we need to use this concrete. So I was trying to think more about the functional use of the object as a concrete, but it became separation and to make it for something else, to make more unity like the football. When you put a football from concrete in a gallery in a museum in an exhibition, people they like the object. It's really visually very beautiful. But the very important thing is why football, why from concrete? From the story.
You're not going to say that the Israeli government would say, of course, that they needed to build the wall because suicide bombers were routinely coming from the Palestinian territories into Israel and killing Israeli civilians, and that the incidence of that happening has dropped dramatically since the wall was built. That's what they'd say if they were here.
Yeah, of course, but I made a film called Infiltrators, 70 minutes, and with my term the theory of the security world by the Israelis because every day I see 300 persons succeed to enter Jerusalem crossing the wall. How come they said this is a security war, maybe there is 300, 500, and sometimes in the weekend there are more than 1,000 people who smuggle to the other side.
Now, you said to me earlier on that your art is not political. It sounds very political to me. It sounds as though it's making a very series of political points.
I like to do the art that it's really related to me and it really comes from my experience. And when I make work about the checkpoint, I lived the checkpoint by myself. I used to go to checkpoint. I know it's political, but I personally don't call it political because this is our daily life. In our daily life, this is what more in the school, in the news, in Google, and everywhere. But in our daily life also, we have bad habits in the streets, we have good people, we have good parties, we have good food. The area there, like, it's really fantastic. The whole people, they just learn how to live with each other and go beyond their pain. Really, it will be like heaven. So that's why I like to call it that it's my work, but it's related to the daily life of the people.
The Palestinian artist Khaled Jarrah. Now, in June 2010, ethnic clashes erupted in southern Kyrgyzstan between Uzbek and Kyrgyz communities. In just 4 days, more than 400 people were killed and 2,000 homes were destroyed. The conflict left deep divisions. Criminal investigations and trials followed, in which ethnic Kyrgyz lawyers defended ethnic Uzbeks. In the atmosphere of recrimination and mistrust, they risked their lives to carry out the work and have been accused by some of betraying their country. For our occasion, Abdul Jalil Abdurasulov has been to the southern city of Osh to meet some of those lawyers. His report contains descriptions which you may find upsetting.
Muslim Bara is a short, dark-haired woman, smartly dressed. She doesn't look like someone who has had to deal with angry mobs trying to beat her up. I'm inside the courtroom where Mongol was attacked in 2011. She was standing in the corridor waiting for the trial to start when she heard the crowd outside of the building. There were about 20 angry women, mostly relatives of the people who were killed during the conflict. The guard asked Mongol to get into this room and hide, but she was pretty much trapped here because she couldn't escape. She couldn't jump out of the window because there are iron bars on the windows. But what saved Nazgul was the fact that when people managed to get inside the building, they actually went into a different room. So when all these people were inside that room, the guards locked the door of that room and let Nazgul out from her room, and she escaped.
At that time, it was difficult. I suffered from depression because of what I went through. But on the other hand, my work gave me the strength to live, as I could see how important it was that I carried on. When you familiarize yourself with the cases and study the testimonies of witnesses, you read detailed descriptions of horrifying events. For example, a crowd chased a Kyrgyz guy, trapped him in a corner, and started beating him and attacking him with an axe. Eyewitnesses gave a precise description of exactly how the axe was used, where the victim was struck, how he screamed, choked, wheezed, and convulsed. It was truly horrible.
How did you manage your emotions when you were dealing with that kind of material?
As a lawyer, I'm supposed to distance myself so that I'm not influenced emotionally. So when I was given a medical examination report, I would just read the conclusion, just the causes of the death. I tried not to imagine all the details. Besides, we had so much work, we had no time to stop and process all the information.
I'm walking along the streets of Osh. There were people sitting on tables, eating ice cream, kids are playing in a fountain. 2 years ago, I was here with my colleagues reporting on the conflict. And back then, this area was completely deserted. The whole city was divided into Kyrgyz and Uzbek zones. Residents made makeshift barricades from trees, concrete blocks, and old trunks. Many houses in nearby neighborhoods were burned, and gunshots put the herd in various parts of the city. Tensions didn't cease with the end of the clashes. Human rights organizations reported arbitrary arrests and torture. They accused law enforcement agencies of targeting ethnic Uzbeks. The UN High Commissioner on Human Rights reported that although 80% of all victims were ethnic Uzbeks, 80% of all detainees were also ethnic Uzbeks. However, there were two lawyers who right to define Uzbeks. But these lawyers were stressful and valuable. Rathan recalled to this day.
When they started detaining people accused of participating in the conflict, there were no lawyers who dared to come and monitor the detention process. Only a few were brave enough to come forward. There was one guy who was detained several days after the clashes ended, and I tried to represent him as his lawyer. Policemen were under serious pressure. They were very aggressive towards the ethnic Uzbeks because they were certain that they had participated in the violence. And when they saw that a lawyer had come to defend them, they were extremely offensive. I was asked to leave the room, and when I told them that as the lawyer of the detainee, I had the right to be present during interrogation process, they pointed a gun at me and forced me to leave the beat. They made it very clear that if I didn't leave, they would use the gun. My clients and other detainees were beaten by police. During the trial, I made a petition to investigate it, as I could see one of the defendants was bleeding from the head. After that, the crowd in the courtroom, there were about 200, 300 people. They all rushed towards me. The crowd chased me and started beating me. They pushed me, hit me on my head and face. It lasted for about 15, 20 minutes. And it all happened in the sight of the prosecutor and the judge.
This reporting was made by a Human Rights Watch researcher in Bishkek in April this year. This is a Supreme Court hearing of another case related to the conflict of June 2010. Rathan-Mayes was present at that time. They had been involved in cases related to the 2010 violence right from the start.
На каждом судебном заседании, по каждому моему клиенту оказывалось давление, угрозы, ну, иногда и рукоприкладство.
Rathan says that almost every case that she was dealing with at the trial, there were threats. People at that time, both the lawyers and the needs. We're joined here by Brizuela, who was his attorney when the crowd attacked them both. Mr. Clark, can you tell me what happened in the courtroom on that day?
People were shouting, throwing insults at everyone, and so the judge postponed the trial until later in the afternoon. When we were walking out of the building, the crowd stopped me and grabbed my bag. They were swearing and screaming, and they started beating me. They wanted to steal the trial documents from me. They were shouting, why was I, a Kyrgyz, defending Saiz, that is Uzbek? But this is our job. We have to defend our trial, no matter what their ethnic background is.
This is the central market of Porsche. The smell of fresh apricot is so strong. Fruit sellers are calling out for customers to come and try their goods. Both Uzbek and Kyrgyz trade here hand in hand. In 2010, it was difficult to imagine them sitting next to each other. And this makes the work of the lawyers particularly outstanding. By defending ethnic Uzbeks as courts, despite all challenges and threats, they show that both communities can reconcile.
Jalil Abdurasulov reporting from Kyrgyzstan. Well, time for Witness now, and it's 50 years since the American President John F. Kennedy made a state visit to Ireland, the home of his ancestors. In 2011, Alan Johnston spoke to the Irish novelist Colm Tóibín about his memories of that visit.
It is June 1963, and Ireland is mired in seemingly endless poverty. This overwhelmingly Catholic country is still deeply conservative. It has a rather grey and weary feel, and sees itself as a small and slightly forgotten place out on the edge of Europe. But into this scene steps a man who is simply the most powerful and glamorous figure in the world, President Kennedy. And immediately, speaking on the tarmac of Dublin Airport, he emphasizes the very close personal connection that he feels with Ireland.
8 of my grandparents left these shores in the space almost a month and came to the United States. No country in the world has endured the hemorrhage which this island endured for so many of her sons and daughters. And they give this small island a family of millions upon millions who are scattered all over the globe, who have been among the best and most loyal citizens of the countries that they have gone to, and have also kept a special place in their memory of this green and misty island.
It was clear that Kennedy felt that, in a sense, he was coming home. And en masse, the Irish welcomed him like a long-lost and much-favoured son. It was as if they suddenly had their very own charismatic global superstar, and he went gliding through the packed streets of Dublin in an open-top car.
And the crowd are attempting to approach on to the road to shake President Kennedy by the hand. We had a crowd of people running alongside the car that are adding to the crowd. Now they've broken the police cordon, but they're being held off by the motorcycle escort, President Kennedy. And our leader, the singer, got a better view, waving to the crowd, smiling. They waved back.
Kennedy reveled in the warmth of the crowd. Later, he recalled with delight having even spotted a group of nuns dancing a jig of joy in the throng on O'Connell Street. And so began 4 extraordinary days during which all of Ireland seemed to draw on Kennedy's charm and confidence. But nowhere did he feel more at home than in the little town of New Ross.
When my great-grandfather left here to become a cooper in East Boston, he carried nothing with him except 2 things: a strong religious faith and a strong desire for liberty. And I'm glad to say that all of his great-grandchildren have valued that inheritance.
Kennedy was speaking not far from a local fertilizer factory called the Albatross.
If he hadn't left, I'd be working over at the Albatross Company. I'll try to respond to the fellow. In any case, we're happy to be back here.
That same day, the president also spoke just up the road in the seaside town of Wexford. It was the home of the now well-known author Colin Toby, who was just 8 years old at the time.
The quays in town of Wexford are very long, and I remember in the days beforehand people were talking about the idea that if the tide was out, it wouldn't be ideal because the president might get a sort of smell from the harbour. And I remember thinking, why can't they make the tide come in when I was 8 years old? You know, it's so important, why can't they fill the bay up in some artificial way? But in any case, the motorcade came around the corner on the quays, and we were in a car, but my father had brought a stool for me to stand on, and the motorcade came around, and this figure who I absolutely recognized. I mean, it's really interesting. You're 8 years old, no idea where everything newspapers, television. But nonetheless, even in this small country, he was absolutely iconic for an 8-year-old at that time. And he was absolutely visible with an open-top car, and he was intensely glamorous. And part of the glamour arose from the fact that he was so suntanned. And in 1963, Irish people, if it was a very sunny day in the summer, they went suddenly red, their skin burned, and that's a deep brown tan simply didn't exist. It simply didn't have, but he had it.
I guess the reception was just extraordinary. The streets thronged.
Not only was he the first Catholic president of the United States, but his name was Kennedy, in other words, he brought the name with him. And it was absolutely clear where it came from, so that this idea that he was one of us, and that he had become the most powerful man in the world, was, I think, immensely important. This idea that if you emigrated to America, you emigrated to a land of great opportunity and openness and glamour, it was on your land already. But it was absolutely clear to me, and no illusion where I was going and how important it was. This was an important moment of history. In other words, it wasn't something my father would have explained to his 8-year-old. The 8-year-old,
And what, lastly, how important to Ireland at the time was the coming of Kennedy?
shortly before he died, I spoke in New York to Arthur Stratton. Always talking about
The Kennedy aid, of course.
I just mentioned just casually that I had seen him at that time, that story as an 8-year-old. And he said, you know, his speech to the Irish Parliament, and was very carefully crafted. And I said, oh, really? He said, yeah. We were very, very concerned about the censorship of books in Ireland and the way in which Irish writers were treated by the Irish state. And the reference to James Joyce in that speech by Kennedy was not a mistake, very deliberately inserted to make clear to the Irish government that James Joyce was leading the national, a very great figure coming out of Ireland, and that at the time Ireland recognised that too. Certainly Kennedy brought that, but also when he spoke in Galway and began by asking if anyone in the crowd had a relative in America to put up their hands, and extraordinary emotion, everyone just raised their hands, because everyone did. And when he went to Limerick and said that it was the best speech he'd heard for a very long time, was a speech by the mayor, who was a woman called Frances Condell. It was an immense pride. Oh, one of our people made a good speech in front of Kennedy.
In that speech in Limerick, one of the last stops on his trip, President Kennedy said that the night before he'd heard a sentimental old Irish melody. And in his address, the president read a few lines from the song. They called on one of the country's faraway sons to return to Ireland in the springtime. And he promised the crowd that he would indeed come back. Soon afterwards, the visit ended. The presidential plane lifted off and quickly disappeared into the low cloud over Shannon. But for John Kennedy, there would be no return in the springtime. Just 5 months later, he was assassinated in Dallas.
Alan Johnston reporting. Comments on the item we had about the Malian manuscripts. Dennis Mayo Otto from Uganda says, incredible precious treasure. There could be many historical treasures still out there that are yet to be discovered. History can be so hard to completely erase. Join David Amano for the 5th floor at this time tomorrow, here on the BBC World Service.
Coming soon to the BBC World Service.
The middle class was growing from 1.8 billion in 2009 to an estimated 5 billion by 2030. But behind the extraordinary numbers is a story about our world changing and people's lives transforming. The new middle class, on radio, on TV and online at bbcworldservice.com/new middle class.
The world stories as they happen here on the BBC World Service. Whether it's news, business, science, art or sport. Whenever and wherever it's happening, you can hear about it here on the BBC World Service, the world's radio station.
BBC World Service, this is James Kamarasamy with News Hour. Coming up
in the next 60 minutes into Africa. President Obama brings a message of hope at the beginning of his long-awaited tour of the continent.
All too often the world overlooks the amazing progress that Africa is making. Many African nations have made tremendous strides in improving democratic governance and empowering citizens.
Fears for Nelson Mandela as the former South African president's condition deteriorates even further. A new dimension to Brazil's spreading street protests.
This is very different. These people have come down from one of the biggest favelas to make sure that their voices are being added to this nationwide movement.
And do we really want a kinder, gentler politics? First, today's main news in detail.
BBC News with Marion Marshall. The South African presidency says the health of Nelson Mandela is critical and has deteriorated over the past 48 hours. This morning, his eldest daughter, Brizuela, said the situation doesn't look good, but that Mr. Mandela was responding and trying to open his eyes when family members spoke to him. His granddaughter, Derika, also spoke to reporters. Gabriel Gatehouse reports from Pretoria.
Nelson Mandela's oldest granddaughter emerged from the hospital to thank well-wishers for their messages of support. They had, she said, given the family strength to carry on and were giving Mr. Mandela positive energy. But as she gathered a bunch of flowers from the pavement, she said her grandfather remained in a critical, though stable condition. The South African president today cancelled his trip to Mozambique, since Sunday's statements from the presidency appear to be aimed at preparing the South African public for eventual bad news.
President Barack Obama has praised Senegal for being one of the most stable democracies in Africa. He spoke to reporters after talks with his Senegalese counterpart, Vicedo.
Senegal is one of the most stable democracies in Africa, and one of the strongest partners that we have in the region. It's moving in the right direction with reforms to deepen democratic institutions. And as more Africans across this continent stand up and demand governments that are accountable and serve the people, I believe Senegal could be a great example.
Mr. Obama was speaking on the first of a three-nation African tour, which will take him next to South Africa. He told reporters his thoughts and prayers were with the Mandela family. Leaders of European Union institutions have reached an agreement on its controversial long-term budget. The deal means there could be a rise in spending, but the amount of money pledged remains the same. Chris Morris reports from Brussels.
Time is running out to get this budget ready, and there was no majority in the European Parliament for the original deal, so it's been slightly restructured to give more flexibility. Many MEPs want to be able to move unused funds from one area of spending to another, or from one year to another. President of the Parliament, Martin Schulz, said it wasn't an easy compromise, but he would now fight for approval of the budget in a parliamentary vote next week. He said the objective has been to make sure all the money pledged by member states could actually be spent. In the current multi-annual budget, tens of billions of euros haven't been used.
Mass cremations have been taking place in the northern Indian state of Uttarakhand, where more than 800 people have died after floods and landslides last week. So many corpses remain unidentified, the forensic experts have photographed them and taken DNA samples. The bodies are believed to be buried by mud. The Indian military is using helicopters to evacuate several thousand Indian pilgrims and tourists still stranded in the mountains. World news from the BBC. The leaders of China and South Korea have agreed to continue their efforts to get North Korea to give up its nuclear weapons program through talks. The announcement came after South Korean President Park Geun-hye met her counterpart Xi Jinping at a